The Last Black Man in San Francisco is a film released in 2019, directed and produced by Joe Talbot, set in San Francisco. It follows Jimmy, a young black man affected by gentrification in the city. He is in pursuit of reclaiming his old house, which he claims was built by his grandfather, and the story centers around how this information shapes his life. Jimmy has come to terms with the fact that the house was not actually built by his grandfather, and the truth is a very hard pill for Jimmy to swallow, highlighted by this scene. It is significant to the development in his character, and for this reason, we can notice that just as the focus of the scene remains solely on Jimmy, the music also features a solo. The variety of angles and shots gives the viewer multiple perspectives of him, falling parallel with the fact that he has a new perspective in his life now. Let's take a look. We start with a close-up of Jimmy's face, and the camera is quite shaky and remains this way throughout the scene, placing emphasis on Jimmy's internal instability. The scene then cuts to a golden section wide shot. The dark objects and walls in the foreground create a tunneled focus on where the light is coming from. In other words, where Jimmy is standing. This focus singles him out, and coupled with the backlighting, highlights his isolation while simultaneously setting him in the house. The light, stained glass, angelic music, and architecture of the house come together to evoke a very spiritual feeling, which will be revisited in the scene. There is a cut to another wide shot, and the same techniques to highlight Jimmy are used. As if he is framed in a portrait, Jimmy sits, still frozen in his mind's constructed reality. This mental block to processing his reality is furthered by the obstruction of the full shot. This changes when the scene cuts to a low-angle close-up. As his comprehension of the situation progresses, Jimmy is shown higher in the shot as the camera follows his head or his swirling thoughts, and he emerges from his constructed reality. Next, there is a cut to a low-angle mid-shot of his back, which pans down to his restless foot on the skateboard. This shot scans his whole body, connecting to how holistic this fact was to his life. Even the skateboard is connected, as that is his enabler, what allows him to mobilize his vision and physically get to the house. It can no longer take him anywhere, however. The next two shots are a low-angle mid-shot, which then cuts to a slightly wider low-angle mid-shot. The camera is moving with Jimmy, again, as he begins to get out of his head. There is a cut to a wide shot, tracking into a mid-shot. The spiritual theme returns, as it looks like Jimmy is praying on an altar. This can be seen as a last resort to salvation, where Jimmy is trying to salvage any last ties or connections that he has to this house. Next, there is a cut to a wide shot as Jimmy screams, and this is directly in contrast to the angelic music and spiritual ambiance created in this scene. His former orchestrated rhythm is no longer synchronized with his life. Now there is a cut to a wide shot, and it looks like he's in a frame again, but this is only because he continues to break that picture-perfect image he had created. He also begins breaking his skateboard. If there is no image or an idea to uphold, what good is a skateboard to get him to something that doesn't exist anymore? The scene cuts to a wide shot, a closer view of him breaking the skateboard, and once again in contrast with the beautiful music, he screams, exposing the ugly reality of the effects of gentrification on his life, a life which he cannot have. The scene ends with a cut to a mid-shot that slowly zooms in. The notion of movement, which is so central to living in a big city, especially San Francisco, which is shown throughout the movie with the buses, trucks, bikes, and the most by Jimmy's skateboard, never actually moved him any farther in his life. This is how gentrification works. Cities keep moving, things keep progressing at the expense of other groups, and this is all finally caught up to him as his broken skateboard, in other words, his broken dream, rests in his lap. As he finally completely embodies this new reality, sounds of footsteps are heard as the cord being held changes by what sounds like a half step. In other words, deviates from the perfect 1-3-5 chord. If a half step is enough to change the entire tone of a chord, a false fact is enough to change the purpose of his entire life. This house will forever remain a constructed reality for him, unattainable and not actually his. This is my cut. Do you agree?